Great morning. We'd like to welcome everyone to today's Finance and Administrative Committee meeting. The agenda has been provided to council.
Move to adopt the agenda as submitted.
Second.
All in favor? Minutes from our September 24th meeting of 2024.
Move to approve the minutes as submitted.
Second.
All in favor? Our new business, monthly financial report and presentation by Ms. Adriana Burnett. Welcome.
Good morning.
All right.
So I have a story to tell you. So I am not a typical finance person, as you probably have realized this by now. So the story that I have to tell you, I woke up this morning and I started thinking how privileged we are to be in a place like this. And I did my normal 2-mile walk. Yes, I do walk every morning. And I felt energized. And I wanted to come today to talk to you about numbers. And I was telling Mr. Alfred before this meeting, I am one of those weird people that actually love numbers. Numbers do make me happy, and numbers do tell a story. I know some people don't like numbers, but I am not one of those. My son, for instance, he thinks that I'm a strange person because I love numbers. So when I was reading the executive summary, and by the way, Mr. Brown, I heard what you said last time, that you wanted an executive summary. So when I read the executive summary, I read the first paragraph, and if I didn't know any better, I will say, wow, what is the town people doing? Because it shows decrease. But there's a story behind that decrease. And the story is on the second paragraph of the same executive summary. So I want to bring your attention to this consolidated financials. Because the story it is that we are spending money on the first quarter. And if you look at the first quarter, especially the core funds, you see that those expenses are higher than your revenues. But you might think, wow, that is negative. Why am I spending more than what I'm getting? But it's not negative, on the contrary. This is the first quarter. What happens in the first quarter? We are starting to get revenues for our town. So if you look at previous quarters for other years, we only get 9% of our revenues on the first quarter. So this look here makes sense. Because if you look at the second quarter, then we get 23% more in revenues. If you look at the last 2 quarters of the years compared to the other years, we get about 68% of our revenues. So this look that you see here is actually a good start. So you should be seeing a change. When you see the second quarter of the year, you will see a change where our revenues can potentially be higher than our expenditures. So this is a normal look. This is a good thing. And even better, when you look at the consolidated number, if you look at the total number of 213.9, if you compare that to the year before, that's about $2.5 million more than the year before. And I know it's not reflected in here, but if I'm looking at the fiscal year 24, if I look at the first quarter of the year, there's actually a 10% increase in our funds from last year. So the numbers, there's a story behind the numbers. We are a very privileged town because our revenues keep increasing. We are in a good place financially. So please do not look at just the 27 number or the 5.5 number here. That just means that we haven't received all the revenues that we need to receive yet. I do want you to look at the next slide. If you look at the budget numbers,
Hold on, Adriana.
yes, sir.
Go back a slide.
Go back.
Just for discussion purposes, let's stop on this slide and see if there are any thoughts or questions.
I do. If you and I were running a normal for-profit business, this report, particularly the opening paragraph, would be very distressing. We're not operating a normal business here. I've been sitting with these folks for 6 years now and hearing these reports, and it concerns me that we start off the report with a negative.
Okay,
Because the truth is that it's normal for our revenues, as you just explained, to be lower in the first quarter than they are in subsequent
That's
quarters, and
correct.
it grows all along. And so to me, I would suggest maybe the report should say, we're following a normal pattern.
okay,
It is normal in the first quarter for revenues to be lower than expenditures. That's the reason we have the reserves that we do. So this is all a normal process. But it just concerned me that we start off by saying the town's net position decreased by $15 million.
okay.
It's like, oh my goodness. But each of us knows, and you know, that that's normal.
Yes.
And so that's my point. I won't beat it to death.
And I think that's a great
I'm not being critical
point.
of you. I'm just making a suggestion.
Yes, and I will take your suggestion to heart, because
Okay.
you're right. It's interesting, I started reading the executive summary one more time after I gave the executive summary to be posted for you to receive a copy of that executive summary. And I'm putting myself, I always try to put myself in other people's places. Because if I were not a financial person, the first thing that I will read is decreasing. So I would be concerned. So I will take your suggestion to heart, and yes,
Great, thank you.
it makes perfect sense, but I do want, and for those of you that are watching and for the people that are here, our community members, we are in a good place financially as a town. And that is, I've been in finance for, well, I don't want to update myself. I like to think I'm very young. But over 30 years of doing this finance and this accounting business. It is great to be in a place where the numbers look the way they look. And it's going to get even better as we continue receiving revenues. So to your point, yes, I will make sure that positive starts positive. But it's also my role as your financial person, financial director for the town. Numbers are what they are, but it's just a matter of communicating them. Yes,
The story is important, as you say.
yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Alfred. Yes, just a couple things. So just the debt service fund, with our beginning balance of 3.3, year to date for 2024, end of September, we're showing a negative there. Can you just slow down and sort of talk us through that line, please?
Yes. So one thing that we need to make sure we remember is that we do have bonds that we issue back in 2017, 2019. So we do have a principal and an interest payment that we have to pay. And we do that, it's about between $3 to $4 million that we pay. So the number that you see there as expenditures, that 4.3 is actually based on the debt that we had to pay every year. 232 is actually, some of it is interest earned. So the numbers that you see there are real numbers. And again, it's based on our debt that we have to pay for our bonds. that we issued a few years back.
Okay. I'm really interested in the look back. So in 22, the balance was 11.2.
I see
I'm
it.
assuming that's year-end balance?
That is correct. So we are comparing oranges to apples here. You're looking at Q1 versus the entire year. So I think, again, based on Mr. Stanford's comment, one thing that I feel, and based on your question that you're asking, I need to bring a comparison of quarter to quarter. So you're able to compare what happened in the quarter of 24, 23, and 22 compared to where we are today. Because right now, what you're looking at is for 23 and 22, you're looking at an entire year versus a quarter. So it is hard for you to make a comparison quarter after quarter. So yes, to your point, a new addition, and I do listen, a new addition will be adding the quarters so we can compare them.
All right, thank you.
Going back to the budget that you approved, we're looking at the consolidated budget of 166.9. This is the net activity, and by net activity, we're talking about 3 months of activity, and we're talking about revenues minus expenses, and this is how you get your net activity here. So if you look at the 21.7 that you have there, and you subtract that from the 166.9, that's how we arrive to the 145. So this is the remaining balance that you have, or that we have in our budget. What I have done during the last 2 months is giving you some activity information on the month of July, the month of August. What I'm doing in here is actually giving you just September. So for September, if you look at the general fund, it shows there that we actually have a net activity of $7.5 million. So the top uses of funds that you see in that general fund for the month of September is actually personnel expenses of $2.8 million and $1.1 million of operating expenses. Those are the top uses of the general fund. In the same manner, the top sources, or what we call revenues, it included $241,000 in local aid tax that we did receive in the month of September, and $310,000 that we received in interest earned. And then again, this is the money that we have in our bank accounts and our state accounts. In addition to that, going back to the debt service fund, again, for the month of September, there are no significant expenses there. And the top sources of funding that we have is $71,000 in interest earned and $30,000 in property taxes. Remember, this is our first quarter of the year. Expectations of getting property taxes is very small for the first quarter. You should be seeing more property tax revenue towards the third and fourth quarter of the year. As it relates to CIP, again, the top uses of funds is 1.3 for our fire trucks and $1.8 million in land acquisition. So again, I don't know if you remember, we have 2 land acquisitions for the quarter. One of them was the 26 acres in Mitchellville Road, and then the other one was an Enchiladas that we just purchased. So that's what makes, for year to date, that's the land acquisitions that we have so far. And then, of course, we also earn interest of $47,000. For stormwater, again, the top uses of funds, we have $159,000 for personnel. And for operating expenses, we have about $77,000 in stormwater maintenance. Top sources of funds included $31,000 in interest earned and $23,000 in stormwater fees that we received. The CDC, very similar, $15,000 in personnel and operating expenses. And the top sources of funds included $36,000 in interest. We have housing fund. We actually use about $15,000 for consulting and other event activities that we had, that we use the housing fund for those activities. So overall, for our budget, we are within budget for the quarter, and we are actually have, as I mentioned before, we have a remaining balance of 145.2. Questions on this slide?
Yeah, sure.
Brianna, I'm looking at the 21 million in comparison to the 145. That's roughly 14%. We've expended 14% of our budget in a quarter. Am I reading that correctly? And if so, where do we accelerate so dramatically our expenditures?
So for the first quarter, I see the first quarter as kind of like a slow time for us as a town as it relates to both revenues and expenditures. However, you do see that the largest number there is for that CIP. And the next slide that I have is actually talking about CIP. As it relates to general fund, most of the expenses are for running our town and our operating expenses. And then the debt service is something that we're going to continue having, especially we have until year 28 to year 27, fiscal year 27, to finish paying off the bonds, some of the original bonds that we have. So right now it is a slow start, and it is 14%. The CIP, and talking to the CIP team, we are seeing a lot of change in or progress on some of the projects that they're working on. So I'm hoping, and I'm sure they're hoping, that the projects continue accelerating as we get contractors, as we get vendors. So it is a slow start right now, but I foresee more changes on the second quarter than this first quarter.
We've had that conversation about how we actually implement our CIP, and so I put a little bit of a red flag there for us to be aware of. Thank you.
Yes.
Stanford, anything here?
Nope, very clear, I understand. Thank you.
Before you move on,
Yes, sir.
I wanted to touch on the stormwater. I know we're gonna have a workshop here on
Tomorrow, I think it's tomorrow.
Yes. And I just wanna make sure I'm clear on this, Adriana, and I wanna also make sure that staff is prepared to give full council sort of an explanation as to where we are. So if I'm correct here, I'm going back to your first page. In 22, had a fund balance of 10.5, in 23, 13.1, and in 24, 14.2. As we talk about what we approved as a budget in 25, we look to spend about half of that. Okay, so in layman's terms, it looks as if we're saving just as much as we're spending in this particular account. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes, so you're reading that correctly. So we do have a $14 million stormwater fund balance right now. As you remember, there's a few things that happened during, and I don't want to, I know there's a workshop tomorrow explaining the balances and explaining some of the expenses, but just a high level. Stormwater is a fund that has been accumulating and growing. So the question is, as we continue replacing some of the pumps that we have, as we continue the maintenance that we have because of the storms and all the different things that are happening with stormwater, then yes, we need to start utilizing our stormwater fund to be able to pay for those expenses. Because right now, we have not, so.
Thank you.
The last slide that we have is CIP, and what I try to do here, instead of giving you a breakdown by project like I have done before, I'm giving you the program names. As you can see, and I want to highlight that some of the bigger numbers here are in terms of the fleet program. As you know, we are getting our fire trucks. So that's what that $3.8 million that you see there is. And then we do have encumbered 3.3 because we're still waiting for additional equipment for the fire department. Land acquisition, as I mentioned before, the acquisitions that we have so far with the 26 acres of Mitchellville Road, and also in addition to that, the Enchiladas parcel that we just purchased too. Another one that I want you to see and is in relation to the PART program. As you can see, the number is now, we have encumbered $5.5 million year to date. One thing that I do want to mention about that, and if I can find my page here, there it is. There's a few programs that are projects that I want to highlight as it relates to the park program. One of them is the Patterson Family Park. We actually have encumbered the majority of the budget that we budgeted for. So we have $2.7 million for that particular project, and we now have encumbered $2.7 million. What that means again is that we actually have signed contracts, and we are in the process of doing something with the Patterson Park project. In addition to that, we have for Beach City Road and Dillon Road, we also have spent about $76,000, and we have encumbered about $94,000. So that one is also in progress as well, based on our numbers. And then the last one, and that's another discussion for tomorrow, is in relation to the beach renourishment. We have actually encumbered about $360,000 for the beach renourishment, and I know there's a big workshop tomorrow where we're going to be talking about funding, and we're going to be talking about some of the things that are going to happen in relation to that project. So there's a lot of different things that are happening within the CIP. The question is, $9.8 million doesn't seem like a lot right now, especially you approved $74 million, and the actual expenses is 9.8. I'm sure the CIP team, and I know for sure that they're working very hard in making sure that this continues moving, that all the different projects that we have on the agenda continue moving. But from a numbers perspective, it's $9.8 million, and we have encumbered $11 million. So altogether, we are on track with our budget. So our remaining number is $53.5 million for CIP. So the question that I have for you is, I know you like to see detail sometimes. Is that detail something that you want me to continue giving you on this presentation? So is this enough at this high level?
Alfred? No?
Yes. I think we talked about this tangentially last time, how we handle projects that last more than a year.
Yes.
And so I'm curious, as a council member, how soon in a budget year are you able to predict what percentage of the CIP budget will be spent?
So right now, we've been having a few meetings so far this month, we have about 2 meetings with our CIP team. As you probably recall, my team has created a new team called the CIP Finance Team. And that team is working with the CIP engineering team to be able to do better projections on where we are with different projects. So the meetings that we had, and I do want to commend Richard Loudon for the great work and amazing work that he's doing in looking at every single project and determining the different phases of a project and being able to determine, okay, how many years is this project going to take place? So from a financial perspective, we continue defining those phases and continue understanding the project and what is the expectation for that project in the different phases. My goal is to be able to quantify by phase, by year, how much money we have spent and how much money is left for a specific project. So to answer your question, right now we're still a work in progress as it relates to how do we determine the different phases of a project? How do we quantify each of the phases? Because every project is different. So for me to tell you, overall, for all the different programs, we are 25%. Every project is different. Every program is different. So it's going to take for us to actually go in detail and analyzing every project to be able to determine how much money is taken and how much money is left. But I do want to, and I don't know if you have seen this yet or not, but one thing that I think you're going to be very pleased to see is the progress that we have done, and specifically Richard Loving has done, in being able to project where we are in a specific project. So what my team is doing behind the scenes and with Richard is evaluating how much money and what is left. Because what I would like to come here and tell you, okay, for the beach program, this specific program, beach renourishment, we have completed X amount and this is how much, and this is what is left. So we're not there yet, but we are working on it.
I appreciate that, and thank you for that direction and leadership. Another aspect of this, and it may be because of my background, each one of these programs might require a different kind of contractor.
Yes.
And I'm wondering whether or not it makes sense for the council to understand where we do not have capacity to implement.
Mm-hmm. So here's one of the challenges that I have seen. As you know, I've been here for 6 months. And one of the things that, and I am responsible for the procurement, for the procurement area for our town. So this is one of the challenges that I have seen. And to me, it was surprising because who doesn't want to come to an island? But the challenge that we have right now is finding contractors that want to come to our island and do all the different projects. So you might think, well, $74 million, who doesn't want to come here and work for all this, work on all these projects for $74 million? But it is a challenge. It is a challenge for our island to find contractors.
I realize we have procurement laws.
Yes, we do.
That might be counter to what I'm just going to suggest. But I wonder whether or not at some point it makes sense for the town of Hilton Head to contract with a qualified contractor for a period of time, so that that person, that company, can dedicate resources to meet our schedule rather than our depending on the private sector competition of contractors. Probably totally illegal, but I think we have to do something that gives us the assurance that our programs are going to be implemented over time.
Yes.
Thank you.
And we do have state rules and laws that we do need to follow as a municipality. In my old corporate world, it would have been nice just to call somebody and say, hey, come and fix this, or come and do this. But unfortunately, or fortunately, we do have to request proposals. We do have to bid our projects, and we need to select the contractor or vendor that not only has the experience and capability of doing the work, but also it makes sense for our town financially. One thing that I do want to mention, and is something that is very close and dear to my heart, is a small business. One of the things that I want to do as it relates to procurement is how do we make our proposals, our contracts that we have, more small business friendly? Because I'm thinking about my father that had a business all his life. And I can tell you right now that it is hard. It will be hard for a small business to bid on a contract like this. Not only they don't have the size in terms of employees instead of capacity or capability of handling some of our big projects. But the question is, how do we get a small business involved in this process? So that's something that my team and I are looking on how we can incorporate a small business in our procurement process. How do we make it small business friendly?
Thank you. I want to again thank you for the executive summary. It's something I asked for. I think it's very useful. We're massaging it a bit here today, and that's
Yes.
good, that's healthy. And I think that you focused here on CIP. At other times, you may focus on something else, and that's good in terms of keeping us informed about what's going on. I've got a question that always has baffled me. Fleet program, $7.2 million. Largely fire engine equipment, as I understand it. We are leasing that equipment.
We're not leasing the equipment yet. That's something that needs to come to town council for approval. That was a recommendation for a resolution to start looking at that, but we're not leasing the equipment yet.
But my point here is the lease is not going to cost us $7.2 million this year.
No,
We're going to acquire $7.2 million worth of equipment
we are.
this year, and we will start making lease payments. So why do we show a budget of $7.2 million if we're not going to be spending it?
Well, we are spending because we have to pay our vendor. So we have an agreement with our vendor that we have to pay them 30 days after we receive the equipment. So we are paying money right now from our hospitality tax revenue. So this is money that is coming out. So the lease is a financial transaction to pay the money back to our hospitality tax, but that's not something that we are doing yet. We will have to come to town council and put a proposal together of this is what it will mean to have a lease and what are the financial benefits, pros and cons. So right now, we are paying the money out of our hospitality tax revenue.
Remember, I'm not a finance person. I look at things from the point of view of
Baby steps.
a small
Yes.
business. And
Yes.
I just, are you saying that we're going to spend $7.2 million and then get reimbursed through a lease?
Yes, that is the intent, and what we will do is either a proposal through a town council, through the town council meeting, or we can have a workshop where we actually talk about lease type of arrangements. So there will be a education component to talk about what that means from a non-financial perspective. What is the lease agreement and how does that look for our town? What are the pros and cons associated with something like that?
Right.
But also right now, there is no lease agreement. Our town is paying with our revenue money.
Would it be fair to summarize what you're saying as we have $7.2 million of fire trucks that we are buying, we are putting that money out now, and then afterwards we are going to arrange a financing transaction of some type?
That is correct. That is, thank you for summarizing, yes.
That seems kind of backwards to me, but that's the way it has to be. So I understand why that's there now. Thank you for the explanation.
No, thank you. One thing that is not reflected in this presentation is something that I take very seriously. I don't know if you remember a few months ago, there's 3 things that are very important for me and my team. One of them is the people component, the process, and technology. I do have to finish my presentation by giving credit to 2 people in my team. And by the way, every single member of my team needs to be praised because there's a lot of work related to finance. But I want to mention something about, and something that you probably are expecting, is our 2024 annual financials, our audited financials. It is going really well. And the reason why I'm saying it's going really well, because there haven't been findings or significant findings as it relates to our audit. So when you hear the word audit, I think it's always really scary to hear audit. But when you hear audit in the context of it's going really well, I do want to give credit to two associates or two employees of the town. One of them is Crystal Bolino and Lori Malik, because they are moving this audit. And I'm going to put in the agenda for January 14 for our external auditor to come and talk about the audit, and for you to be more comfortable where we are with our numbers and how we close our 2024 year. One more thing in relation to process. I said people, process, and technology. Process, we are looking at improving things within our finance team and within our town. So we're looking at everything from credit cards to expenses to changing the way we pay our invoices. So a good example of that is, how do we automate our payments? How do we make it more vendor-friendly? We're looking at how we can improve our revenue services area, from short-term rentals to business licenses. So processes are something that we are working to continue improving within the team. And technology, something that is going to be new is we actually are fully implementing a software that is going to be utilized for our fiscal year 26 budgets. So you're going to be seeing potentially a different reporting from what you're used to. Our calendar for budgets is going to look a little different. So that's something that I'm looking forward to showing you and share with you in the near future. But I just want to make sure that I want to commend my finance team and also the town staff that work very, very hard with us, because it's more than the finance team. I know this is an F&A committee, but actually it's the whole town that works very hard to make things work the way they do. And thank you to all of you for your time. And like I told Mr. Alfred early this morning, talk to the pillow. Tomorrow will be another day, a brighter day. So we're doing very good as a town, even if my first paragraph is a negative, but it is a very positive outcome.
Okay. Any other questions for Ms. Burnett? I want to, two things. One, I want to follow up on Councilman Ames' comment, not the illegal piece, not that piece. But this committee, and through the entire council, did put together a small minority business utilization plan. And, you know, to me, that was just the start of us getting to a better place, to your point of us being a little bit more sensitive to small businesses. I think we can create the environment that Councilman Ames is speaking of, as far as having people readily available to chip away at our work. And I wanted to also show gratitude. This column that you have here, the year-to-date encumbrances, that's something that we were not necessarily privy to or looking at in the past. I think that helps us get to a better place. And now that you have this team compiled, I think expectations as well as accountability will come out of that. So we want to commend you for your efforts, and feel free to bring back to council any changes you think need to be made to that plan so that we can be in a better place, okay?
Yes, I do want, all of you have been here in our community for a long time. You know the small businesses that we have, you know our community. I do want to invite you, for you to advise me, because like I mentioned before, small businesses are big, very big in my book. The question is how, as a town, we can do a better job continue supporting our small business. If you have created something for minority businesses or small businesses in general, and if you have seen something else that has worked, I'm interested in understanding what that means and how do we reflect that in our procurement. Because I want to be able to not just rely on, and I'm not saying anything negative about the vendors that we have. We appreciate the vendors we have. But how do we bring more diversity, more variety on our vendor community that we have? So if you have any ideas of how to do that, or you have seen something that has worked somewhere else, please let me know, because I will continue working on this. This is something that is very big and dear to my heart.
Okay, good.
I would like to respond to what you just said. We already have the program in place for giving minorities an opportunity, which is appropriate, and we need to emphasize that. But maybe we should consider holding a public meeting to attract contractors, to explain the CIP projects that are underway, the size of those, and the process for submitting a contract.
Okay.
And to open discussion. We may learn that someone says, I can't understand how to answer this question, or I don't know what you're looking for from me, and what are my insurance requirements? Those types of things may be helpful in promoting this. Thank you.
I think that's a great idea. I think one of the things that we do that we can accomplish a lot is by asking the people that are actually the small business and what ideas they have, what challenges they have with submitting some of the applications. Yes, I think that's a great idea. Mhm.
Okay.
Anything
Very
else?
much.
No, thank you.
Do we have anybody signed up for public comment on this item?
No, sir.
No? Okay. Want to welcome Councilwoman Becker, who's in the crowd as well. Good morning.
Popular demand.
Yeah, we always draw a heavy crowd here at F&A. So before we adjourn, if I'm not mistaken, this will be our last F&A meeting together. So I wanted to take a moment to thank my colleagues as we have done a lot of good work together. We've had a lot of good discussion, and you can see that we are making positive changes in the way that we do our finances here at the town of Hilton Head. So appreciation to all of you, and we will offer Mr. Ames or Mr. Stanford, who are retiring, any last words?
Or may hold your peace, yeah.
Okay, good?
Thank you for your leadership, Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Appreciate that.
I think we've had excellent leadership, and now I see the evolution of this process moving forward in a positive way, and I'm very pleased about it. And I think David and I can leave this place knowing that it's in good hands with the council people who will remain here, as well as 2 more, maybe 3. Thank you.
Okay, all right, find ourselves adjourned.